Tracking is a sorting grouping of students by perceived ability. So today, tracking takes the form of having different levels of classes, for example, AP, honors, regular remedial classes by subject area. Detracking is a school reform where all students are engaged in the same college-bound, single-track curricula in heterogeneous classrooms. And these classrooms are heterogeneous by skill, by background, and by interest. In traditional high schools, students opt out of or are pushed out of taking chemistry, physics, or advanced mathematics. But at these detract schools, everyone takes chemistry, physics, or college prep mathematics together. This film includes footage of actual detract math and science classrooms, as well as interviews with teachers and students. Their voices are particularly powerful as they share with us some of their experiences teaching and learning in detract classroom settings.
Everyone's in my class. There's no physics is for this kind of student, right? So it's for everybody.
I actually took a little bit of physics before this, and my brother is a physics major, so he taught me some of it. But I've always liked physics, even when I took it before.
I had never done anything in physics before I came to this class, and my mom actually hates physics, and Mom and I are really close, so of course, whenever my dad would start talking about it, Mom's like, oh no, physics, I never understood it, and I was like, well, going to this class, I was thinking, oh no, I'm gonna fail, it's gonna be horrible, but now I actually really, really like it.
So all of the freshmen come in and they all take the same classes, and then they take all the same classes as sophomores and juniors and seniors, and so in that model, there's no room for tracking. So our first year, freshman year, they take biology, and second year they take chemistry. Third year, everyone takes honors physics, and then the fourth year, this is our very first year of our fourth year, and so we decided last year that everyone will take AP Environmental Science as their senior course. So we're teaching it at a level above, say, a standard level, so they're at an honors level if we compared it to other schools.
I probably would have never taken physics, and I would have never, taken the things that I'm going to take, and so it was good to get to have experiences that I probably wouldn't have at other schools.
Students in high school, it's really too young to decide what career paths will be closed off to you forever. So if you don't take chemistry and you don't take physics, you can't be an engineer, you can't be a scientist. There's all this stuff, even nursing and things like that, that if you decide later you want to do it, it's a much harder path. While you're in school already, you might as well take them, see if you like them, and then go from there.
Another reason we want to have all of our students starting algebra right away is because algebra and all the other math courses they have to take in high school are a gateway. They're gateway classes. You need to get through a certain amount of mathematics before you can graduate high school, and you need to get through even more mathematics in order to succeed in college. So we want to get our students started right away in rigorous classrooms where they're learning lots of math and making sure they really understand it and then move on. And one of our big goals is to get as many kids up to calculus as possible, because given the rigor and the support, most students can do it, more than most.
Researchers report that there's been a dramatic increase in the percentage of students who have completed the math and science college-bound sequence of classes. And there have been gains measured for all groups of students, for initially low achievers, but also for high achievers and students from various demographic backgrounds as well.
My colleagues and I compared 3 tracked cohorts with 3 detracked and accelerated math cohorts. And what we found was that there were significantly higher numbers of students who went on to complete advanced math courses subsequent to detracking. This was true for initially low achieving, average achieving, and high achieving students. And the percentages of students taking and passing accelerated math classes was also much higher for African American and Latino students, as well as those who qualify for free and reduced price lunch when they learned in detract cohorts. These results led us to conclude that all students were benefiting from detracking in mathematics, including high achieving students, and so we began to push our reforms forward. We eventually detracked our entire 9th grade program as well as our 10th grade program. And what we've seen as a result is not only better scores for students, but more students who are willing to take the challenge of IB courses in the 11th and 12th grades, so that now over 84% of our students graduate having taken at least one International Baccalaureate course, and well over 50% are full IB diploma candidates. And the gap in participation between our majority students and our minority students is continuing to close.
I think detracking is really helpful for students because it's like some kids come into detracking classes thinking that they're dumb and some thinking that they're really, really smart. And then when they go into class, we all realize that, you know, we're all as smart as each other and nobody's dumb.
I feel like even though I may not be the top of my class, I'm still being allowed I'm still able to try and do my best and still be in a good class. I feel like I'm not in a low class where I'm gonna have low expectations. So I really like how in this class it's I feel like I'm challenged, and I feel like if I can do well, I'm gonna be challenged even more, and I won't be labeled as being in the low physics class or the high physics class or the mediocre physics class.
I like the D-Track classes because it doesn't make it feel like I'm as dumb, because it's just a group of us, because usually I'd probably be in the lower classes because sometimes I don't take it serious, but as I progressed through this year in the D-Track classes, like my grades and everything pretty much moved up, so that's why I enjoy it.
I think the most positive thing about learning chemistry in the D-Track classroom is that it gets rid of that stigma where if you're in the conceptual class, you can still give yourself an out and say it's bonehead chemistry when it's really not. And so what we found is that when the students were all together, their confidence about what they were doing and pride in that was greater.
I really feel like democracy is taught in schools, and it's important to be around people that are not necessarily like you, that may live in your area, but don't exactly share your upbringing, don't exactly share your likes, dislikes, desires, etc. And so I feel like it's really important to be with a randomly selected group. And I also think it's important to see that you're in a classroom with mixed abilities and that people are going to be different and we are all going to work towards a common goal.
For the kids who are the ones being taught, they have multiple teachers to draw from. They can draw from me as a teacher, or they might be drawing from another student as a teacher. And the way I explain something and the way another student explains something, oftentimes maybe one or the other is better, or oftentimes the two meet somewhere in the middle and they work for that student.
I had taken basic chemistry before this class, and I was like, wow, chemistry is like really, really interesting, and it's a breeze. And then after this class, I wasn't expecting there to be such a huge element of calculations and math for all the different heat equations and like figuring out how to balance equations and stuff. And it was a lot more challenging than I expected it to be, but overall I'm going to say it was definitely worth it, and I probably want to continue taking the chemistry courses.
I think high-achieving students come into our curriculum and find challenges in the unique units we create. And I think the most valuable units are our lab gear units I mentioned before, where students have to think geometrically about something that has been sort of abstract, something that's algebraic. And when they have to be able to translate between something geometric and then algebraic on their paper, that is a whole nother challenge. So I think the lab gear unit really does that.
I think that deep tracking is great in many ways, because if you understand a concept, then you explain it to somebody else and you get it even more. And then that's helping the student who doesn't understand, or if you're confused, there are lots of people who do get it and then can explain it to you.
I think the ability to explain is possibly one of the most important things they'll get out of a high school. Because honestly, I mean, for myself, I'm sure I remember maybe half of what I learned in high school, but how much of it do I apply on a day-to-day basis? The ability to explain to another student, I feel like I mean, if you can explain something to another person, that'll get you very far in life.
Well, I love learning in a heterogeneous class because everybody brings different skills and different, like you said, backgrounds to the table. So somebody will think of something completely different from what I would think of. And I think if it was all like really, really, I don't know, intelligent or like high scoring white kids from the same area, it would be really boring. And I learned so much from my classmates just from talking to them or like brainstorming for group projects or talking about a new idea.
In a traditional AP Physics course, they're thrown so much information so quickly that they focus all on the equations and on the mathematics, and they have a really poor conceptual understanding of what's actually happening. And so when they're going through a course like we do here, is that it's a combination of the mathematics and the conceptual physics, but their conceptual understanding is so much vastly improved that I truly believe that when they go to college, they'll be better prepared than, say, an AP Physics student.
The teachers we filmed range from a first-year teacher to a teacher in her 11th year. They teach in large urban public high schools to small charter schools with no enrollment criteria other than interest in an application. But they all teach diverse groups of students in public high school settings that are detract, where everyone learns math and science in one classroom.
It's a public high school, and anyone who applies can come to Summit. The only limitation we have is due to our vision of a small school. We have 100 students per grade level. So if there's more than 100 that apply, then there's a lottery. And so the last few years there have been lotteries. So maybe 300 students will apply and we have a lottery, but it's just a pure luck involved lottery who gets in.
Students apply, and then it's a random lottery to get in. We don't accept based on prior experience. We don't accept, there's no screening.
I'd say racially, it's like we have 50% Latino kids and 50% other. Economically, it's pretty mixed. I think we have quite the whole range.
This school has a working class population, very diverse. I'd say it's 30% Latino, 30% African American, 30% other, and maybe 10% Caucasian. So it's just, I'm not getting the demographics perfect, but it's just about that. And they mostly come from working class families. And so they're your normal kids.
I have students who can't do fractions, and I have some students who are just completely blowing through the Algebra 2 class that they're in simultaneously. Some students have not taken science since before they came to Summit. They hadn't taken science in 6 years. Some have parents that work at the Stanford Linear Accelerator. So, and those are the extremes, and there's lots in the middle. And that kind of, I mean, that's pretty much, we just have everything.
So I would say that many of my students came from schools where math wasn't pushed as well or as much as it should have been pushed. So many of them come in counting on their fingers, don't feel comfortable with their times tables, and then I'll have a totally different range of students who do feel very confident with their numbers and can handle adding positive negatives or multiplying big numbers. So I'd say numerically there's a huge difference between them. And how well they understand percents. Basically, their pre-algebra skills, they're kind of all over the place in terms of what they can understand.
There may be other ways to teach DTRAT classes well, but a particularly compelling framework is complex instruction, developed by Elizabeth Cohen, Rachel Lotan, and other colleagues at Stanford University. I didn't set out to make a film about complex instruction. In fact, not all of the teachers whom we filmed used complex instruction in their classes. But even the teachers who didn't use complex instruction demonstrated many of the principles that are outlined in this framework. Also, where there were weaknesses, as there are in even the most outstanding teachers' classrooms, I found that the principles outlined in complex instruction addressed these areas. So I decided to organize this DVD with the complex instruction framework.
My daughter was a very successful student and very high achieving, particularly in math and science. I was particularly proud of that. And one day she came home from school, in high school, she was in high school, and she said, "Mom, I know it's your livelihood, but group work sucks." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I end up having to do all the work." So I hear that a lot. And in my classes here at the university, this is the generation of students who have gone through group work, some of it bad, most of it, some of it good, most of it bad, and are very wary of group work because they find themselves in very similar situations that my daughter did. They were the ones who had to carry everybody else. Social loafing is a big problem in group work, and there's always that good student, usually a young woman, who feels responsible and takes the work home and finishes it all up.
Complex instruction creates more positive group work experiences through status treatments, group-worthy tasks, and attention to group norms and group roles. Detracking is not an easy task, and it doesn't automatically disrupt the institutional patterns of inequality at the classroom level. Teachers have to do a lot to try and change students' self-conceptions of their academic competence as well as their expectations for their peers as well. Teachers have to teach their students to identify each other's smarts, and they also have to teach students how to work well in groups.
Complex instruction has two basic principles based on the theoretical framework and the empirical evidence that we've collected over the many years. What we found consistently is that the quality and quantity of interaction at the classroom level relates to average learning gains at the classroom level. To optimize interaction, teachers need to delegate authority. That's one principle. Delegation of authority leads to increased interaction, leads to increased learning gains. At the individual level, increased participation in the group activity leads to increased learning gains pre to post. To equalize participation, the teacher needs to break the relationship between status and participation. How to do that is what complex instruction is all about.
Having students who didn't participate or students who take over most of the airtime, those are indicators that there's a problem with status hierarchies. They exist in any classroom, and you can't become complacent about them because status hierarchies change all of the time.
When all students have close to equal status, you're going to get better mathematics. You're going to have more students taking risks and asking questions, and you're going to have more students putting their ideas out there. So that's my goal overall, is to up that status. So if you've got a low status student in a group and you ignore them, you're just taking away a huge chunk of what matters to their learning and to the rest of the group's learning. So if I have a student who's low status socially, I need to figure out a way to help them bring up their status. And that might be through another student in the group, and that might be through personal attention that they get from me. And if they're low status mathematically, same reason, I know they have some really interesting math ideas. I have to listen for those and hear them, and they have to be authentic. When I hear a student do something authentically mathematically worthwhile, if I can bring it to the group, that student's status is going to come up for themselves personally and for the other students in the group, which means that they're going to be more included, and of course they're going to give more to the group. So in general, any low status student in a group needs to be brought up.
An incredible math teacher said something that really resonated with me. He said he uses the term low status instead of low achieving because low achieving sounds fixed. It sounds like you can't really change it, while low status gives you some maneuvering room and a focal point to work from. So let's say you have a student who comes into the class and he puts his hood over his head and he just puts his head on the table, and he has a long history of failure. He doesn't do much homework. Well, as a teacher, where do you get started? If you focus on participation, it's a small enough piece. It feels doable.
we recommend, as part of the status treatments, that teachers do two things. One, a multiple ability orientation, and second, assign competence to low status students. What are multiple ability orientations? Multiple ability orientations are introductions to tasks that require many different intellectual abilities. The point about multiple ability orientations, or redirecting both the teacher and the students, is to convince the students that many different smarts are needed to complete the task. That verbal ability, quick calculating, and reading are only 3 of those abilities. But when they are facing a complex task, many different intellectual abilities, many different intellectual operations are needed to complete, to be successful in that activity, in that learning task.
Now, this is mathematically challenging enough that each of you should be able to add something mathematical that no one else can. You will be especially helpful to your group if you can do 1 or 2 of these things. First of all, if you're good at remembering the names of the pieces, use that a lot for your group, because a lot of people forget them, and you can be helpful that way. If you're the kind of person who's good at keeping area and perimeter separate, that'll help. Like yesterday, I was talking to Roberto, and they had done something with x squared, and Roberto's like, no, wait, that's area. That's not right. He was able to get his group back on track with perimeter. If you can recognize when a number should be used or when a variable should be used, that's very important. If you can keep track of the little details, remember you're writing lots of little details all the way around. Be careful not to double count them. Be careful not to miss any. If you're good at doing that, bring that to your group today, Devon. If you're good at combining like terms and dealing with negatives and positives, bring that to your group. And lastly, can you find different methods for getting the same perimeter? If you can do that, you'll be amazed at how much quicker you can get your group to go. So as you're working on these, if you see it another way, tell your group about it. When I ask students to do group work, it can't be a simple task. It's pointless to do group work around a simple task. It will actually worsen your status issues. So any task I give them is going to be challenging, and it's going to require multiple entry points in order to solve it, or allow for multiple entry points to solve it, and require lots of different things to think about in order to get to your answer. So they're going to start something really hard. And if I put something really hard in front of them just out there, I think all sorts of status issues bubble up. But a multiple abilities to treatment is my opportunity to say, all right, you're going to work on this difficult task, and you're going to need lots of different things to succeed on it. Let me give you a clue of what those things are. Maybe you have to be good with multiplying quickly. That's really basic. But maybe you have to be good at looking at something physically and representing it algebraically. Or maybe you need to be good at asking, is this answer reasonable? There's all sorts of things that a student needs to be good at to solve these hard problems. If I can put out there exactly what those things are, then a student can say, hey, I have that talent, I can add that to the table, or, oh, I don't have to be so scared, I see some of the things I'm going to have to do to get there. So that's the goal of a multiple abilities treatment.
Assigning competence is a very powerful intervention. It is also not an easy one, because what assigning competence means is that you have to identify students who are previously low achieving, who usually don't participate a lot, who usually did not have had the experience of being successful in the classroom. You have to identify them and catch them in the moment when they are participating, when they are contributing. Those moments, unfortunately, are rare, but when they exist and when they happen and when you see them, you must take advantage of them, and you must point out to the student and to the other members of the group that that contribution was an important contribution, that it was relevant, and that it made a difference for the task. So assignments of competence need to be public because you're treating the group as well as the individual. They have to be public, they have to be relevant, and they have to be related to the task that the group is engaged in.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Now how we gonna get, you know how we can get, how did we have it last time that can make it 6? Remember we was like, it's 6?
Oh,
it was like was it like that? It is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's this. Oh, and then you minus these 2.
Yeah.
But you gotta minus, don't you gotta minus the X?
Well, you need the X's.
Yeah.
So that's 2y, 2x. Nice thing to get 2 more y's.
Which one are you guys working on?
The last one.
Okay, so I think that you got to slow up and listen to your partner real quick, because she was saying, how did I do it last time to get 6? And that statement is exactly the right statement that's going to get you where you need to be. How are you going to get 6 Y's? And she started moving pieces around, and right away someone else was like, no, and you started pushing it together. This is an important statement. I think you guys should build on that. So that question is going to get you unstuck. That is the key question, darling. Lift it up.
Unstuck.
Repeat that question for them. That was crucial. Repeat that question.
It's up there.
What did I say? Oh. How did we get 6 Yeah.
Wait, that is right.
But we gotta do the X.
That's minus 1. X minus 1.
Minus 1.
X minus 1. So minus 2.
But it's minus 2. Because it's minus 1, then minus 1.
Out of 2.
Out of 2.
So you get 0.
0.
So that's right.
What's right?
2 minus 2.
So years ago, I was teaching a geometry class, and I had 2 students. One student, a boy, happened to be high status mathematically and sort of middle to low status socially. You know, people knew him, but yeah, he wasn't the most popular kid. And I had a girl who was very outgoing, very socially high status. Everybody just loved her, but she had very little confidence in her mathematics. I think she had failed the class that she was in with me several times. It was a geometry class. And I watched her closely because I just saw something in her. Despite her struggling sometimes with the mathematics, I saw something in her that was really supportive of her group. And at first I thought it was just a social thing, that, you know, people like her, she's got a nice personality, she brings people out. Then I watched closer and I realized she always knew the right question to ask. So students would be working on some mathematics and they would feel stuck. And she would be the student to say, whoa, back up. What does this number mean again? Or wait, what's our goal here again? And regularly that would unstick the group. And finally I started addressing that directly in class. I started saying, hey, oh my God, thank God you're here. Look what you just did for your group. Because you asked that question, you got them over the top. Well, as time went on, these 2 students got to know each other better, and they were in groups together and then separate. And at the very end of the year, I said, listen guys, I'm gonna let you guys pick one person you're gonna work with. And this high mathematical status student said, I want this girl. And I said, oh, okay, why? And he said, because she knows exactly what to ask me. And it was such, and this girl just perked up. She was so thrilled to be sort of given that kind of status. But beyond that, I think she really did believe it, and it was true. She really finally understood that asking a good question is important to any math problem. And she started taking ownership of that and succeeding because she took ownership of that. And it was just such a beautiful moment.
You can't assign competence unless the curricula allows multiple competencies to shine. The curricula has to be group worthy. Group-worthy tasks have several features. They involve authentic questions, they allow multiple abilities to shine, they are open-ended and involve interdependence, they hold students individually accountable, and they have clear assessment criteria.
I do a complex problem every unit that they work together on, and so the basic format is they'll come in and they'll know it's a complex problem day, and they're at group work tables of 4, and they're in heterogeneous groups, and so mixed skill levels. And they take the they get a complex problem, and the complex problem is usually in some sort of story format, and then usually it involves an ending that's unsure, and it involves there could be multiple answers. So there isn't generally a single answer that is going to be correct. And sometimes we do it where every group has a different problem. So generally we have 6 groups in a class because we have about 24. And so the one that we'll be doing in a few weeks, there'll be 2 different problems. So 3 groups will have one problem and 3 groups will have another problem. And the idea is that they'll have a full class period to work together and try to solve the problem, and they use poster board, and they need to present the problem. They know they'll have to present it the following day.
It's important to start with an essential question that is centrally connected to the discipline and is authentic in the sense that it applies to the real world. This approach is in direct contrast to approaches which move sequentially from the basics to an advanced question. You start with a complex question and then you build discrete skills in.
So I think the biggest thing is to not just teach a skill, because sometimes, having kids who know it and kids who don't know it really makes for not a very productive time in class for everybody. So the biggest thing is to have a problem or a question that you're answering that's big enough that people can get at it from different points of view.
One example of starting with the big idea or an essential question that's centrally connected to the discipline might be learning about the complexities of instrument building, because students can learn the physics of waves through an instrument building unit.
In this unit, we are learning about the physics of sound and building instruments. Everybody gets to build their own. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of them. They're all the physics concepts, they're mostly going to get the physics of waves. So, what determines waves, what determines the way they behave. And they're also going to get a lot more sort of like a music lesson out of it too. So it's not just the physics, but they're going to get like a music background, because a lot of them don't have that. You're going to figure out which frequencies you'd like to get for your other notes. You're going to find out which frequencies you want. So, for example, let's use somebody else's number this time. You guys. And then we're going to learn about 3 different kinds of instruments. So we're going to learn about string instruments and how those work and how they're built and what determines the way they sound. And then we're going to do wind instruments and how those work. And the math for each one is different. So the math for the string instruments is pretty straightforward. And so basically if somebody chose to build a string instrument, building it is not really that big of an issue. It's more learning how to play it. Like if they don't know how to play it, it'll be hard. For wind instruments, playing it's pretty straightforward, but building it's really difficult, and the math involved is pretty hard. Because you have to, like, if you're making a flute, the width of the holes really affects how it sounds, so it affects the wavelength. So they would literally have to make like 10 versions and see which one's closest to correct. And then the third kind would be not percussion per se, because we can't build drums, they're way too complicated, but like marimbas or xylophones. And so those are the 3 choices. But we learn each one of them, how they work. We're actually going to build some in class first before they build their own.
The hell? Those look like they have 2 the same ones. Yeah.
I think
we measured something off wrong, dude. What?
Look, hold up. Long time to get a good read. Well, let me make sure that you guys have this right.
Yeah, no, C and the B, one of them is off. Hold on, let me measure them both.
Almost taken. Where's the cutters? Where's my hat?
I don't know, someone took it.
Wait.
Did your calculations end up like this every time? Because it was done weird and she wrote it kind of wrong. But you know how she had it like this? 343 divided by 4 times that?
Has to be in parentheses. This has to be in parentheses.
Yeah, I know. You divide it by 4 and then do that. So it should always be 85.75 divided by f times 100. And then you subtract 0.61.
As they're building, they're going to be putting together like a portfolio. And they're going to sort of document what they've done and how they built it and what the math was involved, so the lengths of all their stuff. And then talk about what was hard, like what was something they had to keep redoing till they found the right way to do it. And talk about like what their struggle was in building it, how that relates to the physics of it and why that part was hard. So for example, for a string instrument, the hard part is, strings are fine, it's just building something that's strong enough to hold the neck on. So like the forces involved are really difficult. So just more conceptually talking about like what's the challenge in building this instrument? Like why would somebody have a hard time doing this?
The problems were the problems that we had were the mirrors again because we messed up on one of the calculations, which was the high note, and this one we had it didn't like go and fit in with all the others. So we had to take this mirror off and make another one and glue it back and wait until it like glued and like stayed and dried.
And then they're going to perform, when they're done, they're going to perform on their instrument, show that they actually does a whole scale and that it's fairly correct. And then talk about the process of building it and what was difficult and what they struggled with and how they fixed it.
Okay. Kind of.
Yeah.
And then the other one's the you can't do that.
The more I learn about the project-based learning and the detract classes, the more I think it's the way to get students to understand why they're learning things and to have a much more meaningful experience.
Group worthy tasks involve multiple intellectual abilities. They involve many ways for kids to understand the task, to be successful in the task, and to demonstrate the many ways in which they are smart. They also provide different entry points into the task. So kids who have difficulty reading can enter the task via a model, a visual, an audio recording, a snippet from a video.
I see students shine when usually they're really reserved and they don't say much, or sometimes they aren't that too great of a student, but in physics class they see things click that I don't, and they tell me things that I didn't realize, and they do things that I wouldn't have expected them to, and they do really well, and it's really cool. And
students do have different understandings to bring to the table, so somebody could really understand mathematically what's going on but not really understand conceptually when something occurs. Like I feel like my own understanding of physics is very mathematical. But I have some students that that play sports who are maybe lower level in terms of math, but they're actually fantastic people to have in class because they have really great insights as to how the physics works because they've experienced it themselves. And so having those different kinds of learning styles like contribute to everybody's understanding of what's going on is really valuable.
So I think when we thought we would start every student in algebra at the school and we do it in a heterogeneous setting, we would make sure that there was no tracking whatsoever. We had to ask ourselves, how do we create a curriculum that's going to be challenging to every single student, and how do we do something that allows students to come in with an equal playing field, come in with equal status. And I think we've used manipulatives and we've used sort of really focused units around big ideas to make that happen. I don't think we could have detracked everything and took a traditional algebra book and taught directly, this is how you combine like terms. I think we had to have students look at it in a new way so that every kid was coming in with a brand new lens. So a good example is with lab gear, we're asking kids to think geometrically about algebra. No student has been asked really to do that yet. So they come in maybe they understand things about variables already, but they have to reapply it to something geometric, something physical. So it really kind of evens the playing field pretty early on. And it's surprising, it's not surprising anymore, but it was always surprising that kids who maybe said they always failed their algebra classes suddenly had a leg in and suddenly would shine in ways that would surprise me and other students.
What I learned in the perimeter challenge was we had a certain amount of blocks, and they had X's and Y's, and we had to figure out just the perimeter. Like if it was his head was like 3 X's, we had to figure that out, and then we had to combine like terms.
And you'll be surprised. I want to see you guys right.
But it's hard to.
I know it is.
It's like
I
when
know.
X and Y attack and stuff.
I know it is. It is really, but the thing is,
like you get it, and then there's like more stuff, and then you get it, and then it just be right there.
But you know what? That's what builds deeper understanding. When you understand something, and then I can shake that, and you get confused, but then you can build back up and understand again. Every time I shake your tree, and you climb back up in it, you're going to understand more, and you're going to be a better student. So that's what I'm doing. This, I told you, was an extremely hard problem. I wouldn't insult your intelligence by giving you something easy. I wouldn't, because you already know the easy stuff. Trust that if you and your partner write all the way around this thing and talk about every piece, you're going to get it.
I got a question.
So, why don't you do the writing and start talking about it.
X, 1, X, that's X. X, and then this whole thing be y minus x, x, y, and then this would be y minus 1.
Wait, we gotta do this part.
X, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 x's plus 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have y minus 1. Plus y minus 1 x. I don't know how to add these. I only got y minus 2.
Oh my god, you guys really have good math. And you have a nice way of kind of drawing it. So all you have to do is look at this.
I just need to ask her. How would you add? Chug it. Would it be 2y minus 2?
I don't know, because I got that part, but this part, oh my god.
This is hard. So Christian and Giovanni are going to come up, and they're going to get us started on it. But it's easy for them to miss little things or make mistakes, so you need to be good audience members. Listen closely, help them out, ask them questions to help them be clear. Be supportive, not aggressive. All right, gentlemen, come on up. You guys. All right, don't start until everyone's looking up front.
Do I really have to do this? Okay, the way that we started off by first labeling all the sides. So this is y, but there's one blocking it, so we wrote it like this, y minus 1, and then this is x, this is 1, this is x, and then this is 1, this is 1, this is x, 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 1,
X, X.
This one is y. There's 2 blocking it, right? 2 blocking it, so it's minus 2. And then this one right here is the same as this one.
So it's y.
This one blocking it, so it's y minus 1. For this one, we wrote it this way because there's x blocking the y. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's 11x. And then there's 1, 2, 3, and 4y.
Okay, over there. Ask them a question to help them be more clear.
What happens with the y minus 1 and the y minus x?
Yeah, we subtract those from the ones we combine from this one. So it's going to be minus 2, minus 1, minus 1, and minus x. So that this right here would be minus 4. So you subtract this. And then minus x, so that would be 10x plus 4y as our final answer.
Diana and Dom have a different way of thinking about these all together, and I want them to show you it so that you might be able to use this shortcut too. Why don't you guys come on up? I know. Do you guys know the difference between an A math student and a B math student? A B math student knows how to do it one way. An A math student knows how to do it 2 ways. If you're going for that A, listen right now and make sure you have this in your toolkit so you can do better on a test next time through. So I think the perimeter challenges are interesting mathematically for several reasons. First of all, the geometric look at algebra. But they also have to think, what is perimeter, and how do I keep in mind what perimeter is as I work? Beyond that, they're looking at variables, and they have to make sense of, well, an x is a number that changes, but so I can't just call something 5, I have to think of it as x. Then they have to deal with subtraction, so if there's an x piece and one's covering it, I can't just call that length x, it's really x minus 1. So there's this sort of abstraction around variables that relate physically to the model they're looking at. So students have to remember what perimeter is. Students have to be able to think abstractly around how long is this length, what name would I give it, and why, and how do I justify that? And then they have to think about combining like terms. And some students combine like terms through just simply writing things out the long way, and others have this way of looking at it physically and thinking about how to combine like terms. If you've got an x minus 1 here and then adding 1 there, well, that's simply just a length of x. So students were really sort of pushed to think multiple ways about perimeter and combining like terms, but they also got the opportunity to show where their strength where their strength was, and then they could use that strength to present it out to the group, and I could ask more kids to think differently about perimeter.
Group-worthy tasks are open-ended. And the best shorthand for that is, what's an open-ended task is, well, the answer is it depends. You have to first specify the conditions under which you get to a possible answer. It doesn't mean that group-worthy tasks don't have a right answer, but the right answer can be different under different conditions. So you might have multiple solutions for the problem, or you might have multiple ways of getting to the solution. That's what open-ended means.
We're going to do a POW called the swimming pool. To be successful in this, your groups are going to need to do a lot of things together. The questions aren't that complex, but you will need to have someone who can sort of visualize what these different shapes will look like. You'll need to draw them out. You're going to need to put drawings together to figure out what they're going to be like. You're going to need to use lots of formulas and calculations. But this is probably the biggest one here. You're going to need to come to consensus. Your group has to agree. The final question we ask you is going to be, what is the best design for a swimming pool with some certain conditions? And you have to agree on what best is, because your group doesn't get to pick two bests. You have to decide. So if Kevin thinks that the best would be something that has a certain shape and Anthony thinks something different, they have to talk it out, and maybe Zelene's idea was going to help out figure that out. But they're going to agree on it, okay? So there's a number of conditions that are required, and you're going to want to draw those out and figure out how to work with them. Along the way to answering your big question, there's 4 little questions. You're going to consider each one of the possibilities first, answer all those questions, and then put them all together for one big pool, okay?
You swam or you dived that far off, and you hit your head on that edge,
You'd die.
it would hurt a lot. But then again, if you did like the slanted pool, there wouldn't be any sudden drop
And it would be
off.
safer for little kids because they wouldn't fall.
Because then you could like let them go into the pool, and then like when it starts going deep, they'll know and they'll just like come back up.
And you want one that's like sort of long, so if somebody wants to have laps, they can swim laps without getting.
Yeah, do you guys like agree and like understand what we're trying to say? Yeah. Well, that would be like the answer for number 6, because if like they did pools like these, like we did for number 4, it would like we said, it'd be a little safer for the little kids because there wouldn't be any sudden drop off, so they couldn't like drown or whatever, and you could hit your head on the edge, and it still gives you enough room to dive and do laps.
It would be so it's 10 times 10 by 20 by 38.
A trapezoid.
So it's 10 by 20 by 38.
We can do that. I'm better at trapezoids.
By 40. It's 10 by 20 by 28.
38. Yeah, so we can do this as being a trapezoid and 2 rectangles.
Based on the work of Johnson & Johnson, the pioneers in cooperative learning, interdependence, creating a group product and thereby creating interdependence among members of a group is a very important feature of group tasks.
Your task: using your knowledge of intermolecular forces and the cell, design a plausible model for the cell membrane using the basic molecule above. In addition, explain how this molecule is able to prevent ions and most polar substances from diffusing freely across the cell membrane. So we use our knowledge of intermolecular forces to make a model for the cell membrane. So just make a model like this, or like what? I don't know.
Assigning a group product increases the amount of interaction between students. So for example, in one chemistry class, students had to come to consensus, they had to come to one explanation of the phenomena, and they had to make a poster and also explain it to the whole class.
Okay, so our topic was the cell membrane. So the cell membrane is made up of the basic molecule that looks like this, which is a bunch of elements bonded together. One end is carbon and hydrogen. So each end of the little jagged
Interdependence, I think, is important for the group product because it shows the students that they will get a better product if they use other people's intellectual contributions, that they will get a stronger argument, that they learn more when they interact with others.
So why use group quizzes? So when you're doing complex instruction, you need to think about, is this task group worthy? You need to think, are there norms that are supporting the kids to work their way they're supposed to, and norms and rules to do that? Are you dealing with status? And then lastly, are students held accountable for what they do? And so this is my accountability piece mostly. It's my opportunity to say, you're talking about mathematics and all of you are responsible for each other's knowledge. So when I come over to a group and I say, all right, so I'm going to ask one person about question number 3. Are you ready? Are you sure you're ready? And I'm more than willing to leave and let them talk some more to make sure they feel confident. But it's my way to be able to say, group work isn't passive. You got to be active, and you got to make sure you're asking yourself, do I get this? And does my partner get this? And then, of course, it's also my way to really see, what do they understand? And when I quiz them, I don't necessarily see, how'd you get the answer to number 3? Often I'll ask a question about, hey, you've got 2x written on this paper. Can you tell me where 2x comes from? Why is it there? How did you guys know? So it also allows me not only to hold kids accountable for the knowledge, but then also try to push the knowledge a little deeper. And thirdly, it allows me to assign status. If I come over to a group and a student who does an amazing job, I can really say, hey, this particular part of what you said was really insightful. That was great. It really helps your group. Or if I come over and a student is blowing it, but I know that it's more about nervousness than understanding, I can say, I'm making you nervous. That's okay. I'm leaving. I'll come back in a minute. So I got a lot of play with these quizzes, and I can deal with a lot of things. But I'd say the number one is I got to hold kids accountable, or the conversation won't happen the way I want it to.
X plus 2y plus 10. Just try to look at the writing. Remember what I'm writing.
Oh my god, I'm scared.
Do you know how to explain it? Because she might
It's because the thing is, we do know how to explain it, but we don't know what questions she's going to ask. So we never know. I wish you could just tell us the questions so we could study them.
I'm kidding. Okay. I'm going to pick a number. Do you want one more second to practice, or are you ready? Because you're welcome to have as much time as you need. Okay, I'm picking a number, 1 through 4, and whoever picks my number's going. Go. You are psychic. You're going to do great, darling. I know you will. Okay.
I would say woo, 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 woo.
Good.
I'm not in the mood.
Okay, good. Anywhere you want to start. Do you want a fresh piece of paper just so that all the little writings don't confuse
Can
me?
you ask me a question and I can
Oh,
answer?
absolutely. Okay. Why don't you start walking around and tell me what each side is and how you know.
This is wide.
Okay.
This is long.
Uh-huh.
This is one. It's like one square.
Uh-huh.
And this one's X because it's small. It's a small one.
Mhm.
And this is 1 because it's 1.
Uh-huh.
And then this is X because it's small. And this is 1.
Mhm.
And then this side is X.
Uh-huh.
And these are 3.
Uh-huh.
And then this side's X.
Uh-huh.
And this side's 1.
Okay, and this is 3 and this is 1?
Yeah.
So the only side you haven't mentioned, I like you saved the hardest part for last. Yep. The hardest part you haven't mentioned is that. Okay. But it's not you. Okay. What are those? What's that?
Y.
Okay. But is it all of Y? I mean, this is all of Y. That looks shorter than Y.
It's -3.
Why is it -3? You know what? I know you got it in your head. You're just a little nervous. I'm not taking off points. I'll let you practice that, okay? But let me tell you what I'm going to come back and ask. After you explain to me what this length is, I'm going to ask you why it's 2y, why it's 4x, and why it's 8. Okay, so I'll ask you those individually. I'll give you 30 more seconds, 60 more seconds to practice with your group. You've done beautifully so far. It's okay, because you all get nervous. You get 60 more seconds to practice with your group, and I'm quizzing you. Ready? Is this it? Oh, yeah.
It's down here, see?
Because there's 3 blocks.
Just write it in the way you can remember.
Yeah, I can remember that. And then what is she's gonna ask me all this?
Because it's right here.
Just get it right.
Just try to do it again.
Okay. It's Y because of this side and this side. It's 4x because it's this side, this side, this side, and this side. And it's 8 because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then you take away 3 because this, and this is blocking the Y.
Okay. And then you get this as the answer.
And this is
After you subtract the...
After you subtract this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready.
There's also group tests, and that's an entire test with pretty challenging questions on it where students have to work on it together, and when they're finished with it, I grade maybe 1 problem from each test or 2 problems from each test, and students don't know which paper I'm grading, so it's important that they make sure everybody has each other's information. And then of course there's individual tests where students have to show, hey, after all this group work, I've really learned how to master this on my own. So I'd say that although there are points associated to group quizzes, they're a bit more informal. But there's also the formal group test and individual test.
The purpose of individual accountability is twofold. One, ultimately, kids need to be able to demonstrate what they have learned individually on a test, in a performance, somehow. So the individual accountability makes sure that the teacher knows that all members of the group benefited from the group interaction. So the form that individual accountability takes often is an individual report. I like to put questions that were discussed in the group on the individual report so as to make sure that everybody had access to an answer. It's also important to emphasize to the teacher that group work doesn't stop with the poster that you presented or with whatever model or role play or whatever, but that is but a pre-writing activity almost that helps the individual students, particularly the ones who have trouble with writing, to develop their writing because they have something to write about that they experienced.
What I'm going to tell you about the individual write-up now is we have about 18 minutes to do it today. I'll carve out a little chunk of time tomorrow, like 10 or 15 minutes to do it. You might need to spend a little bit of time at home. I think the whole write-up is going to take about 45 minutes or so. Here's what I really want you to focus on. I need a very clear description from each of you of what your group did to solve this task. The process is incredibly important to me because I focused on asking you questions about how you were doing it. I want you to, Doug, can you hold on for a second? I want you to focus on telling me, Corey, thanks. Guys, I need you not to be writing right now. All of you on the back table, 4, stop, thank you. I need you to tell me what it is that you did, okay? So I don't want you to say, we found the biggest volume. That doesn't tell me how you found it. If you had to argue about to make it longer or wider or deeper, I want you to tell me what you argued about. If you tried 50 different numbers until you got the biggest one, tell me how you did that and how you decided. If you broke up the numbers and each took a turns, tell me about that. Because your answers are easy to tell me. What you did is what I'm really interested in, and then your evaluations and your self-assessment. Okay, so you can discuss as a group about the problem statement and the process to the rest of it's sort of individual writing that you should do on your own today, tomorrow, or for homework, okay? So we have the next 17
Once
minutes.
we found dimensions that were like close to the ones we had, didn't we just like mess with numbers or guess and check just to get volumes that were even closer, right? Once we found dimensions that were close
You have to remember that these students are moving on to all sorts of different classes in the future. They have to do lots of individual assessments when they go to college. I can think of a particular student that I know appears on the video who can just master a question when asked face-to-face. How did you get that? How do you know it works? He's amazing at it. But you sit him down in a quiet test situation and he starts to panic and he makes little mistakes. So I'm working with him on how do we take this amazing talent you have? How do you see that as not just a talent you have when you talk, but it's a talent you can apply to your paper? And how do we help you not make these little mistakes? How do we help you feel more confidence when you're working individually? So the group quizzing allows me to see that about him, but then the individual quizzing helps me, or testing helps me see the disconnect, and then I can start making the connections.
Finally, group-worthy tasks include very clear criteria for evaluating the product, the process, and the way that the individuals are being held accountable.
What I would like you to do is, with your group, read the 4 things on the sheet you already have about what you're expected from the presentation, the visual, the individual write-up, and the evaluation, okay? So take a couple minutes and read that over while I hand out your prompts, okay?
Visual. Your presentation should include a visual. It should be clear what the visual depicts. The visual should be directly related to the content of the presentation. The visual should enhance the presentation.
Individual write-up. After the group project is finished, each person in the group should write a summary of your group's conclusion and justification. The summary should be at least half a page in length. and will be turned in with your individual project.
Oh, we have an individual project. We just choose we're not doing it together. I thought we were doing it together. Evaluation. Each group member should evaluate their own participation in the group work. This evaluation should look at how you participated in the group project and how you participated in class for the first month of second semester. Give yourself a grade between 0 and 90 and 100. Justify your grade with evidence. For your group members, including any comments you'd like to make about their participation. You are not required to give them a score.
When we did a research study that was actually an experimental study where we had some classrooms use evaluation criteria and some classrooms that didn't, we found that in the classrooms that where the kids used evaluation criteria, the rates of interaction increased, the group products were higher quality, and individual essays of kids who were in the more productive groups had better quality than kids in groups that didn't. So the evaluation criteria contribute to the quality of implementation of complex instruction. It's a very important element, I think, because kids have an opportunity to self-assess first and then to assess their peers on the quality of their products. I define that as delegation of evaluation rights. In traditional classroom, the only person who has the authority to evaluate is the teacher. When you put in the hands of the kids the right to evaluate themselves and others, and therefore hold themselves and others accountable, I think it's an important change in the structure of traditional classrooms.
I think all of us have been in a situation where we've tried to say something in a group and we get interrupted or we just don't get heard. And rather than making excuses about how the student isn't participating because of personality traits, like, the student's shy or unmotivated, complex instruction really encourages teachers to take a close look at the context of why that student might not be participating.
When I'm thinking about setting up norms in a classroom, I need to think, all right, what do kids need to do? How do they need to behave in order to get through tough mathematics? So I kind of run through my head what kind of things I need from them. And then I think, well, how do I communicate those norms to them? So I know one way that kids will all get access to mathematics is if papers are in the middle of the table.
Put it in the middle.
Keep doing what you're doing, but in the middle. Make sure people are with you.
That's how you're going to build it?
Yeah. So let's see. This one?
There you go, right in the middle.
Okay.
So that's a norm, that you push your paper towards the middle of the table and all work happens on scratch paper in the middle of the table. Because the goal is everyone learns. So I have to communicate the goal, everyone needs to learn this stuff, and the norm, keep that paper in the middle of the table. I also understand that body language plays a huge role in how students do their math and how they interact with each other. So when I make it a norm for them to lean in and use positive body language, I know that positive body language is going to lead to more students asking questions and sharing ideas. So I sort of have to think physically and emotionally, or physically, how do they have to behave in order for them to have access to this mathematics and each other? And then how do I communicate that? I have to communicate the reasons behind me telling them to all lean in, and then I have to hold them accountable for leaning in. And I think that's how I think about norms whenever I'm doing a task.
Yeah, we all use their group work complex norms, so we have those all posted in everyone's room, and we all agree to do those in our first, we call it the first 2 weeks, and every morning in the first 2 weeks of every year, there's an hour design lessons that we teach to mixed grade students, and that seniors are now teaching them to the freshmen. But they're all designed on passing along the community feeling that everybody is here to help everybody else succeed. And I think that's a really powerful part of it. And yeah, I think it is a message that just needs to be consistently sent.
I want to start with this first one. Is anybody willing to come up and just show how to do this one? All right, sure. Rodney, come on up.
I wanted to do it.
Too late.
I have my hand up. Late, what? What if I do it wrong?
Then everyone will help you.
I like seeing people go up to the overhead because if they get stuck on a problem, they don't get judged for it. They just get helped out, and I think that's good.
Help Rodney be as clear as possible. So if he does something that you're not sure about, make sure you raise your hand and ask him a question.
Cross out those 2 bags and cross out those big cancel out each other.
Oh, wait.
Why do you cross out those 2 bags?
Yes.
Because you have to cancel that one and that one and that one and that one, so they should leave that one.
So participation quizzes are our way to try to make transparent to kids what the norms are. Make transparent to kids what they can do to support their groups, both as someone who talks to the group and can do something to nurture the group and encourage the group to talk, versus someone who can do something mathematically that will move the group along mathematically. So when I do a participation quiz, my goal is to help students understand exactly what I expect of them, and also give them reasons to take risks and do something that feels a little awkward. So if a group's sitting there and they know they need to read the problem out loud, but who wants to take the risk and do the first reading? If I am praising other groups by writing up over on the overhead, group 1 reading out loud right away to each other, it's easy for someone to say, oh, group 1's doing it, we better do it, man, I don't get my points. And now I don't think in the end most kids want to do it for the points. I think most kids want to do it because they want to succeed in a math classroom. So I think participation quizzes, they communicate to the kids right away what my expectations are. They encourage them to continue to do what's going to support the group. It gives them little warnings if they're doing something that's not going to support the group. And it also gives them excuses to do what they want to do, which is learn math.
That's where we get it to -x.
Why would it be -2x?
Because
because of these sides, this one and this one, and they're x. Oh, okay, I get it.
So let's see, what can we do to
Well, you are earning back that point in full force. Keep it up.
what can we do to what can we do to make it different?
To make what different? Like the...
I want to give you grades for this, and I want to let you know how I thought you did. Group 1, you guys were solid all the way through. I particularly like this question. You said, so this y is minusing, or this statement, this y is minusing from that y. You didn't just say, so it's minusing. You were specific about your y's. And overall, you stuck together and you asked lots of good questions. You guys get 10 points. Group 2, you guys started off rough in that Giovanni was sort of like running the show and the rest of you were along for the ride. But halfway through, Jadira stepped up. She figured something out Giovanni couldn't figure out, and there was this big, I got it. And then by the end, other people were touching the pieces and you guys were thinking together. So you didn't start off as great as I wanted you to, but you recovered well. So you still get a 9. That's still an A. Group 3, I heard a lot of questions like, does this look right? I don't know how to do it. How do we get rid of the Y's? I like this question the best. How do we get rid of the Y's? Those early questions are good. They get people talking, but they're not the best. These are the kind of questions I want.
Team captains. That's you, Hannah. At your service, sir. Team captain reporting duty, sir. Okay. All right. So I'll turn the mic off. Hold on. Okay. Gather, quick. Okay. No. So what we need to do is this. We have, it's 9:39. We have, okay, that makes you powerful. Right. We have, and you're the only one holding a baseball too. That's also pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can
we have about 30 minutes left in class, and so in about 8 to 10 minutes from now, I want your group to kind of wrap up where you are, and you're going to start your write-up. Okay. But that means that I want you to try to do your best to make sure you've gotten at least through 3 or 4 of the questions. Ideally, you're going to get through it the first 5. Okay. Does that sound good? So I want you to tell your group that in about 8 to 10 minutes you're going to do it. But so make sure that in the last few minutes, if someone hasn't written everything down, you don't have all your work shared, that your group shares the work. Fair enough?
Okay.
Break.
I think the purpose of group roles is because if you don't assign the group roles, it will always be the same students who take over. And sometimes giving the students, because group work is hard for Group work is hard for everyone, but especially for high school students who are, you know, there's social issues, there's hormone issues. I mean, there's just everything, you know. So giving them a defined thing that they are responsible for makes the group work run more smoothly.
This is what I want from you specifically. Team captain, you need to keep the group together and leaning in. If anyone leans out, team captain, I want you to say, Facilitator, you need to check for understanding and make sure every voice is heard. If one person's being quiet in a group, facilitator, just say, hey, what are you thinking? Don't let any one person dominate. Resource manager, this is a very important one. Make sure you build in the middle first. Discuss and use scratch paper first. And only when everyone understands, put something on your own paper. Recorder reporter, make sure the work is correct on individual papers once they put it there. Call me over for a quiz and get everyone ready for that. And then, of course, if your group is stuck, come up with a group question.
When I put students in groups, I try and do it as randomly as possible or as transparently as possible. And the reason is, if I put students in a group of 4, if I come in with a list and I say, all right, you 4 are together, they're going to spend the first 20 minutes openly expressing, you know, their frustration with being in that particular group. Why am I with these people? What is this teacher trying to tell me? What messages am I being sent? That person's smarter than me. You know, there's just so many assumptions that they are going to come up with. They're all valid. You know, they're valid assumptions. They may not be true, but if I choose randomly in my office and then come out and tell them what I've done, they won't believe it. So if I'm going to choose it randomly, I'm going to show them that it's random so that we can just get down right to work. And I'll often try and remind them at least about how difficult it is to work with people and the importance of.
I just can't stand the fact that some kids do not have access to quality instruction, to quality curriculum, that they find themselves in classrooms where their smarts are not appreciated, are not recognized before they are appreciated, because there are so many wonderful smart kids, I'm using the word smart here, smart kids around in places where nobody knows that they are there. And I just think it's wrong.
I guess some of the most rewarding parts about this would be when students would, like, at the end of the year, talk about their experience. And I still remember one student looking at the chemistry final saying, like, if I would have seen this at the beginning of the year, there's like no way I would have ever thought I could do this. And now she had gotten an A on the final and she was like really proud of herself. And there's just a lot of moments like that. I think in some ways that's why I like teaching chemistry, because you have that hurdle, like everyone thinks it's so hard, it's so hard, it's so hard. So that once you finally switch it and they're like, hey, wait, I can do this, it's not that bad, it really means something to them and it grows their confidence a lot, because it was something they thought they could never do.
I think that you have to understand that group work is really challenging to do. It took several years for me to feel like I even had the slightest grasp on how to handle all the different things that come up when you do group work. How to handle status issues, how to write good curriculum that supports group work, how to create norms and rules that make sense to kids and make those actually happen in a classroom. It's so challenging. So I think my advice to anyone who wants to detract with group work, you need to find a team of teachers who want to do it with you so you can figure out how to do it together. And I also think you have a right to ask for help. You have a right to say, listen, there's training out there around how to do group work in a math classroom. We need our school to support us in that.
For me, detracting has become an issue of real passion.
because I've seen the benefit, especially to students who are less privileged and who come to school with fewer resources. We've really been able to level the playing field and increase the number of students who are high-achieving students. I think as educators, we have an obligation to do that. And I think what's been wonderful about this reform is that it has not impacted negatively the students who might have been considered in the past to be the best and the brightest. We've expanded the pool of the best and the brightest, and we find that success has really become a bountiful harvest that more children can enjoy due to detracking.